Earlier, we were talking to you, and this was a very fluid situation. Law enforcement just getting on scene. We were just getting confirmation.
What time was that? Was that like around 7?
That was around 7 or so.
To set the stage, just officially, because I was the one that was able to get all this information out there first, it was right around 6:56, 6:57 that this started to be called out. And then we were able to get it on the air about 7:03, 7:04. So that's at least the timeline I'm working with. There might be a little bit more finagling once we hear from a press conference about this, but we think that that's about the best situation as far as like timeline is concerned. That's somewhere in that 6:50 6:55 range is when this incident started to come to light, and the presence of the emergency crews started to move towards this location. It was just a couple minutes later that everything started to get shut down.
Okay. All right, Chip, we appreciate it. We want to check back in with former Chief David Brown, former Dallas Police Chief. David, as the scene starts to develop here, I know Kristi Noem has made some statements that there were 3 fatalities in this. We haven't independently confirmed that because local law enforcement hasn't confirmed it yet. But I guess as this investigation starts to develop here, what more can you tell us about how this is going to play out?
Well, it sounds like the feds are going to take the lead, so we're waiting for some collaborative statement or press conference that might include, federal law enforcement along with local law enforcement. Apparently, Kristi Noem is confirming, although we don't have that from local, like you mentioned, that we have fatalities, which to me, kind of highlights the accuracy of this shooter. Likely a little planning took place. And we need to know more about, the weapon used, who these people were that were harmed, and is there some connection between what they were arrested for, or was it just immigration, or were there other types of charges? Was it targeted, is my point. And, kind of what is the investigation leading toward as far as motive?
Yeah, Noem's saying that there were multiple injuries and fatalities, not saying a number, just saying multiple injuries and fatalities. Earlier, we had heard 3 shot who were critical. So, yeah, we're still waiting to. She also mentioned that the details were still emerging, but that the agency was confirming that there were multiple injuries and fatalities. That was the first time we heard fatalities. She also mentioned, which I thought was interesting in this statement, that she wanted to point out that there has been an uptick of targeting of ICE agents. You're in law enforcement. You can speak on that as well.
Yes, this is such a politically charged issue, immigration, that you likely have agents who are just doing their job, being assaulted, being threatened, and these types of calls where you have bomb threats or whatever just, affects the psyche of law enforcement. And I know we haven't mentioned this, but we haven't ruled out that any of the people who are injured were law enforcement or civilian employees of law enforcement agencies. So my prayers go out to these victims and their families. The law enforcement community is a tight-knit group, and so this highlights really the concern, that really is an ongoing concern of threats to law enforcement.
As we've been looking at this scene now, and we were talking earlier, this all kind of happened or began to develop around 7 o'clock or so. It wasn't until about maybe 20 minutes ago that they blocked off the main lanes to 35E there right at around Regal Row and Empire Central. And we can now see more vehicles now traveling on the main lanes. For a brief time, though, and it was much later after everything had kind of calmed down, they shut the highway down. What does that tell you in terms of what officers on the scene there are trying to accomplish?
At a perimeter around where they find the shooter is important investigative territory, where you're looking for his car. You're looking for other evidence, maybe he had a bag where he carried the gun in. So you really want to widen that perimeter, that investigative perimeter, until you can, find those types of pieces of evidence. The fact that they widen it is basic policing 101. So you really want to cast a wide net and then narrow it as you start eliminating pieces of evidence because you found them or you have some other reasons to know that it's not in a wider area, that it's really a smaller perimeter.
I have a question, and without getting into too much detail, I don't want to get too graphic. How do they decide when a gunman has a self-inflicted gunshot wound, whether they're going to transport him to the hospital or not?
They you know, this is also police protocol, kind of basic policing. You treat even the perpetrators as people you have to protect and get them to, you know, any type of medical facility or get them treatment. You put a tourniquet on, even though they may have done such a heinous crime, you still are trying to preserve their life. It applies to all. So the fact that law enforcement didn't discharge their weapon, because I didn't hear reports of that, it kind of eliminates, you know, any other persons doing it, and that he self-inflicted, and you can kind of see the evidence of it. Although with a rifle, it's probably not likely. Likely with a handgun would be my suspicion. It's much more difficult, although not impossible, to self-inflict a gunshot wound to yourself with a rifle. But it's possible, likely a handgun.
And how difficult is it with these rifles to police them? I mean, with a handgun, for those of us that aren't as, you know, expert knowledge, don't have a lot of expert knowledge on guns. With a handgun, could I shoot someone from a roof from far up, or do I need a rifle?
A rifle is for longer distances. Handgun is for, you know, shorter distances. It's much more difficult, I would say almost impossible, to fire from a rooftop at some distance with a handgun and hit what you're shooting at. Likely a rifle, some type of long gun was used. Not necessarily scoped, which is, you know, you magnify the target. It could be just the sights on a rifle or those little notches on a rifle for laymen. But, you know, likely a scope rifle would be my best guess now.
So that's why we're seeing rifles being used in these cases.
Right. It makes for, if people hunt, makes for even the, you know, novice can be accurate with a scope rifle at a rooftop elevated position down to a target.
I know earlier you mentioned, or you talked about, the difficulty as a a leader in law enforcement addressing the community after something like this. You know, as we're looking at this scene, we see these officers all lined up on the access road as seemingly in the order at which they responded to this scene. For a law enforcement officer, when you hear reports of a sniper on a building and you're told, you know, you're dispatched to go to the scene, that in and of itself, I mean, you guys deal with danger all the time, but that in and of itself has got to be, for an officer, a very frightening call to hear.
It really is, and it speaks to the courage and bravery and really the nobility of law enforcement, that they run toward bullets. They run toward danger, not because they don't have fear, is that they overcome their fear with courage and bravery. And so I just want to highlight that, you know, these officers are human. They have that fear, but they overcome it with their courage.
And is it just whatever officer gets on the scene first, or is there like a, hey, you're the guy that goes in first? Like I know in like some SWAT situations, they have like the, you know, the guys that go in first. When there's a call out like this, is it just whoever's closest?
It's whoever's closest gets dispatched, but also SWAT is called as part of their response. Because of the rifle, because of some of the, you know, the rooftop, the elevated position. So SWAT has those similar weapons to try to really defeat that suspect's advantage. But the first responding officers are regular patrol officers, whoever's closest, and you try to get there and, you know, render aid, make the scene safe as best as possible while SWAT is arriving.
All right,
yeah,
and we're taking a look.
Appreciate that information.
And we can see that there's, you know, a lot of officers still there. At what point do they start releasing some of these officers?
Well, right now, the scene is being transitioned to a crime scene, and officers will have posts to protect the crime scene. So you'll still have some cars there and some officers there on into the morning, into the early afternoon. That will start to diminish over time, but it's still very early in this investigation. It's just a few hours in. There's a lot of real work to do, a lot of, you know, evidence to collect, photographs, interviews with witnesses, and again, just trying to figure out what this motive was is really thing number one. want to do.
And I know we're going to move on here, but again, to me, this looks like it speaks to your point earlier when you talked about federal, state, and local officials all working together, because you know this area. You know exactly where this is. You've got 3 main hospitals to the east. You've got an airport. You got Love Field to the east. So
that's right.
There's no way that the Dallas police is going to have the staff or the resources to go to each of these places, because I imagine somebody's going to have to go or be dispatched out to Parkland, to UT Southwestern, to Children's Medical, to Love Field.
That's right. That's right. You got to interview these witnesses. Each one of the witnesses, as soon as they're able, you want to try to get, from them firsthand what happened. What did you see? What kind of things were happening as it happens. That's the best evidence from eyewitnesses. And again, there's a team of investigators headed to this guy's house to try to figure out where does he live, who does he live with, interview all those folks, any connections, any friends. That cell phone is going to be valuable, rich information. Who was he talking to this morning? Who did he text this morning? What kind of social media post did he make? So this is the very beginning, and there's a lot of work to do and a lot of collaboration with various law enforcement agencies.
Yeah. All right, David Brown, we appreciate your insight. And seemingly you would think that there would be also some witnesses calling police that were driving by. This is a busy time of morning. So, to recap here, there has been a shooting. There have been 3 people who were shot, and apparently those 3 people were being detained.
Yeah.
They're ICE detainees there at that ICE facility. The shooter or sniper was on the top of a roof of a nearby building.
We just got an update from police. They just posted that this call went out at 6:40 this morning. It was a preliminary investigation determined that a suspect opened fire in the government building from an adjacent building. 2 people transported to the hospital with gunshot wounds. 1 victim died at the scene. The suspect is deceased, and they'll be holding a media briefing later. But that was the official post from Dallas Police just now. Yeah.